Hello and welcome to my introduction video on the new EOS R. So this is a super exciting launch for us as this is our first full frame mirrorless camera. You heard it, that's right, it is a full frame mirrorless camera. Probably one of the most anticipated cameras in my career at Canon. There's a lot of people being very excited about this, and yes, it is here. So what's so special about this camera and what's so special about this launch? This is a reinvention of the EOS system. So this is an EOS camera, like our EOS M series, like our 6D, 5D, 1 series for that matter. But this is a reinvention of it. And why I'm saying that is because the engineers who designed and built this camera were told to start again. Go back to the drawing boards, rip up all the old rules and start again and decide on what you would like using the latest technology and what will give you the best image quality. And the EOS R has come out of that. Now, as we mentioned, it's a mirrorless camera, which means it hasn't got the mirror box assembly inside it, which means you can make it a lot thinner. So this is a lot thinner than our current generation of 6D or 5D. But what they've managed to do with this is they've managed to hang on to the large mount. So if we have a look, let me put that lens down upside down then. If you have a look at the front here, this lens mount is pretty much exactly the same as our EF, which is actually a really big deal. If you look at some of our competitors, for instance the Sony, it has a much smaller mount. And the bigger the mount, the more able you are to create new lenses, create really exciting, unusual concept lenses that maybe haven't been seen before. And that's what this camera is all about, creating this new design, the next level of image quality, the next generation of glass. So this is very exciting. So another thing you might notice about this mirrorless camera, which is a bit of a surprise compared to other mirrorless cameras, is you can't actually see the sensor. Most mirrorless cameras, when you take the lens off, the sensor's there, you can press it, you can see it, it's there in front of you. This one, it has a shutter that comes down and covers it, which I think is a fantastic touch. And there's one thing I've learned about from using this camera, there's lots of little touches on here, which are amazing, which all put together gives you a really lovely experience. So let's look at the design of the body. So first of all, if I take the lens off, the size and weight of it really reminds me of an 80D, and we have to remember the 80D is an APS-C size sensor, whereas this is full frame, but it has that same sort of weight and that same sort of feel to it. Now looking at the back, the buttons on the back remind me, I think, of a 6D Mark II, but then when you look at the top, the buttons remind me of an M50. So that's really interesting that I think we've taken like the best bits of the cameras that we have in our lineup at the moment and put them onto this body. Now the screen on the back, now I'll just fire it up. So the screen on the back is a fully articulating screen through 180 degrees and then 90 degrees downwards. You can flip it all the way around, so you can have it on the back like that, or you can have it out. And this is, I think, is a great touch to have this on here. It's amazing how many of our competitors don't have a full variable angle screen. They just have like a screen that flips upwards or flips all the way downwards. And obviously you can imagine if you want to do vlogging or something like that with this camera, that screen is brilliant to have. Now if we look at the back, something that I haven't actually seen before and something that's new to this camera is this little toggle here, which is a touch sensitive pad, and you can set it up to do lots of different things, but it's a different way to control the camera. And then on the top here, and we have the mode dials as you'd expect. All the buttons are in the places that you'd expect. So if you've used one of our EOS before, I know I've said this about other cameras, but and this is really the beauty of EOS, if you've used one before, you can use another one and you don't have to learn a new menu structure or anything like that. It's all very similar to use. Mode dial on the top there, you've got the toggle, then you've got the push button there, you've got the multi-function button. What I really like is the movie button. They've moved it, and usually you find them on the back here, which makes it quite easy to accidentally press or something like that, but they moved it onto the top here and given it a little surround so you can't accidentally press it. Pretty much all of the buttons on here are customizable as well, so you can set them up depending on what type of photography or videography you're doing with this camera. You notice on the top as well, there's a little screen here. Normally this is just like a liquid crystal display, but this is actually a proper screen that you can change the layout of it, change the look of it. So it really is a very nice screen for customizing it again to be able to do what you want to do. Now if we look at something else on here, it's a viewfinder. Got a viewfinder on here. This is obviously an EVF, not an optical viewfinder. And I don't want to go into the benefits of an EVF or the difference between optical viewfinders or this one in this video, but this one is the highest resolution EVF we've ever produced. It's a 3.6 million dot, so really, really high resolution. But what I love about this is actually the design of it and the eye point. The eye point is about 23 mil, and basically what that means is that you haven't got to hold the camera pressed up against your face to get to be able to see everything through the viewfinder. Personally, when I use this, it reminds me of our 1 series. It's that big, it's that bright, it's that clear. Okay, it's an EVF, not an optical viewfinder, but it has that same sort of feel to it, that comfort to it. And this is the reason why it sticks out a bit towards the back here as well. It's just about, once again, that comfort. Now looking at the connectors that we've got on the side here, so you've got a HDMI as you'd expect, you've got mic input and you've got headphone input on here as well. You've got the jack for putting in the remote release, and also you've got the cable to connect up to your computer. Now the battery that this takes, I'm really pleased to say, it's an LP6N. Which is the same battery as what you've got in what? 80D, 7D, 5D, 6D. It's fantastic that it takes this battery, because if you're putting this camera into your current range of EOS products, odds are you're going to have a couple of these. So you can put it straight in and start using it, which is fantastic. Card slot on the side, we've gone for SD card slot, as opposed to some of our competitors have some other different types of doing it. It is the single card slot. Really why we've done a single card slot is to help with the ergonomics of the whole camera. We really wanted to use an LP6N. If we went for dual card slot, maybe we'd have to put a different battery inside there, or we'd have to sacrifice some of the button layout or the control of this camera. So we have gone for single card slot. If you did want to be able to back up your images, like a lot of people talk about the benefits of having dual card slot, this camera does have Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth inside it. So you could actually back up your images remotely, direct to your smart device, which is an interesting thing, and maybe I'll cover that off in another video. Now let me give you a rundown of the technology that's inside this camera. So nearly the whole of the inside of this camera is new, which, as I said, the developers have gone back to the drawing board, started again and started to build this camera. So first of all, the sensor. It's a 30 million pixel sensor and it's a full frame. Now this is very similar, it's of the same generation as the 5D Mark IV, but it is a different sensor. They've had to redesign the micro lenses, they've looked at the technology behind it. So the image quality should be very similar to the 5D Mark IV, but it will be different, and it'll be really interesting to see what the difference is when these cameras really go out to market. Now the processor inside there, it's a Digic 8, so it's our latest processor, and that gives you some really nice technology, but I'll come on to that shortly. What I really want to talk about is the AF system inside here. I think this is the crux for a camera like this, is how good is the AF system. Now we believe this is the world's fastest at 0.05 of a second to get a lock onto your subject, but this is still being debated at the moment, and hopefully we'll have clarification on whether we can say that externally or not. So it's dual pixel CMOS AF. This will be the most advanced version of dual pixel CMOS AF you've ever seen, and this is because this Digic 8 processor and the way this sensor works. It now covers 90% area. What is really exciting is this will go down to -6 EV, and this is basically telling you that this camera will get autofocus in almost complete darkness. And I mean almost complete darkness. No other manufacturer has got anywhere close to -6 EV. So this is a really, really big shout for this camera and makes it really, really exciting. There's a really unusual specification on this camera, and it's something that I think will really create quite a stir. And that is that there is 5,622 different AF positions that you can choose on this camera. This is more than anyone else by a long, long way. This basically means that the AF system inside here is really, really adaptable. You can select them in different ways, whether you want to use the touch and drag AF from our M5, which is an amazing, amazing feature, or whether you want to use buttons to go through. You can also select different areas, larger areas, smaller areas. It's got face detect on here. But what is really interesting, it has eye detect. So the eye detect feature is super accurate for portrait photography. You can select that eye, you can switch between one eye and the other and make sure that that is pin sharp. So let's talk about the speed of this camera. It will shoot 8 frames a second with the autofocus locked at the first frame. If you're tracking a fast moving subject like someone running towards you or something like that, it will shoot up to 5 frames a second. I really like the sound of the shutter. It's actually quite a nice, quite a soft noise. But what is really good on this one, it does actually have a silent shutter mode, which is a feature that's very exciting on mirrorless cameras. So if you're inside a church and that kind of thing, you can't actually hear the shutter. So this is, can't really hear anything. This is silent shutter. There you go. But that's the difference between them. So this is a really exciting camera, whether you're photographing those fast-moving subjects or whether you're photographing in a dimly lit church. Now, I've already mentioned about the headphone and the microphone input, so I really think this camera could be of real interest to videographers as well as still shooters, and also the variable angle screen. Let's not forget how useful that is. Now, this camera will shoot full HD at 60 frames a second. It will also shoot 4K at 30 frames a second. You can actually connect up a external recorder to here, which will give you 4K at 10-bit, which is very exciting, and the first camera of this type to give you the 10-bit. Obviously, the dual pixel CMOS AF works in 4K. There is a crop factor to it, but the crop factor is exactly the same as what we've got on the 5D Mark IV. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the lenses that come with this camera, but I'm not going to go into too much detail. I think that's another whole video where we start talking about lenses. So this is a 24-105 L series lens, and this will really show what this sensor is capable of doing. Now, if you notice, for you sharp-eyed people out there, you'll see that it actually has 12 contacts on it. This is, I should have switched the camera off as well before taking the lens off, but I didn't. Don't tell Mike Burnhill. You'll see it's got 12 contacts on here, and this is more than any other manufacturer, I believe. And this is about the lens being able to communicate with the body in a much more sophisticated way. This helps with things like the autofocus, this helps with communicating the anomalies in the lens and things like that. So it really is an amazing step forward. Another reason to have these contacts is the new lenses will have a control ring on them. You might be picking up that audible click. This really tells you that you've made that selection or you've made that change. You can actually get that taken out if you want to use it for video shooting as well in at our service centres. But this really means that you've got so much control with this camera using the control ring there. There will be 4 lenses available from launch, but like I said, I'm going to go into that into another video. I want to really concentrate this one on the camera itself. If you own any of our EOS at the moment, or if you have any of our EOS lenses, you'd be glad to hear that this camera will come with an adapter, and we do make a number of different adapters for different types of things. The great thing about the adapters is they will take EF and EF-S lenses. Obviously, there'll be a crop factor involved when you use the EF-S lenses, but the ability to use the more cost-effective lenses on this camera I think is a great shout, especially for movie shooting. There will be 3 adapters. There'll be the standard EF to EF R, which is what this mount is, adapter. There'll be an adapter with a control ring built into it, so you can use this control ring if you're using a standard EF lens. And there'll also be one coming later which will have a drop-in filter ability to it, which once again I think will be a real interest to the video shooters. Now, the last thing to mention on this camera is how customizable it is. Doesn't matter where you come from, as in whether you've been using a M50, whether you've been using a 5D Mark IV, 1DX Mark II, or whatever. You can set this camera up so it's very similar to the way that you're shooting now. Of the 14 buttons on here, you can customize all of them, which is just an amazing array of different ways to use this camera. I think this camera will take quite a lot of training to make sure that people are using it correctly and using it in the right way, or getting the best out of what this can do. But this is very exciting. So that was a quick rundown. I could talk forever about this camera because there's so much new stuff on it. I feel like I need to shoot a lot of different videos on this to give you guys a better idea of what it's about. As soon as the embargo lifts and I can go outside, I will go outside and start shooting with this. But thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. And if you like this video, give us a thumbs up.